Everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for another meditation and mindfulness session from the Freer and Sackler Galleries. For those of you who might be new, we are offering these sessions on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And each Friday we have a focused artwork from the museum collection. I'm excited to introduce our session today, which will be led by Aparna Sadananda, and our special guest today is Emma Stein, who is an assistant curator of South and Southeast Asian art at the museum. Emma and Aparna are going to be introducing us to a beautiful artwork, which is currently on view in the Freer Gallery. So since we can't go and visit it in the museum, we're going to visit it virtually today. We will start off with a short look at the artwork with Emma, and then we'll move into the meditation practice led by Aparna. Then, if you'd like to stay, at the end, we'll have some time for your questions and some discussion about the experience. So again, thank you for joining us, and I'll turn it over now to Emma Stein.
Wonderful. So we're looking today at a beautiful and rare sculpture of the Buddhist deity Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. It comes from Nepal. It's made of wood, and it was made during the 14th century. I've opened us. We'll look at this through the image viewer that we have online, which you all can also explore at your leisure at home with every work in our collection. And I've opened us with this view, this kind of three-quarter view of the sculpture, because it really gives a sense of the three-dimensionality and the amazing skill of wood carving of the Nepali artist who created it. I've also opened us this way to ask you to open your imagination. We're all looking at a tiny screen and little squares, and all of our objects have been reduced to these tiny dimensions. But this sculpture is actually nearly life-size. It's 5 feet 3 inches, and it would be displayed on a pedestal. So Avalokiteshvara would actually be looking down at you. So you can see these beautiful downcast eyes, and this gaze looking down would be focused on you as a supplicant, as a devotee, or as an appreciator of artwork. So let's look a little bit at who this deity is, and then talk a little bit about what makes this particular sculpture so special. So Avalokiteshvara is a bodhisattva, which means he's a being who has reached the kind of threshold of enlightenment. He could be completely liberated from the cycle of birth and death and rebirth that, according to Buddhist philosophy, is actually the root of all suffering. He could be liberated, he could escape, but he decides instead to postpone his own enlightenment for the benefit of helping others. He's the embodiment of compassion. Avalokiteshvara is the bodhisattva of compassion. He's a major protector deity throughout the Himalayan world. He's extremely popular throughout all of Asia, across the Buddhist world. He is embodied as this spirit of beneficence, of help, or helpfulness, of compassion. He can see all suffering, and as he sees it, he simultaneously has the power to alleviate it for everybody. So we can begin to see in this sculpture the way that the artist has represented that idea. Look at the face. Look at this very placid, kind of kind, almost meditative inward look, the swag of his torso, the sway of his hips. Everything has this sense of gravity, this sense of almost liquidness about him. He stands on a lotus pedestal which indicates that he's a divine being. Gods across the Hindu and Buddhist world typically are shown standing or seated on lotuses. They're a symbol of purity. They're a symbol of the potential of all living beings to achieve enlightenment. Now, Avalokiteshvara, especially white Avalokiteshvara, is a really important deity in Nepal. And he's worshipped in a festival. He's known as being white like the autumn moon. But we can see that the surface has actually been painted, and he's not white here. The surface of the sculpture has been repeatedly painted as an act of adoration, as an act of devotion. And it also would have received regular lustrations of sacred substances. So it's pretty incredible as we look at it to see the way that the surface has been preserved and survived. If we begin to walk around, we can see that this is a really incredible artwork. Look at the way that the multiple arms, which are intended to help all living beings. Gods are they have super bodies, they're superpowers. And so they have the potential to multitask and to help multiple people at the same time. As a deity in Nepal, he would have been enlivened by consecration deposits. And if we zoom way in, we're so lucky to have these extremely high resolution images. Can you all see this square in the back? This is actually an opening. It's a cavity where sacred objects would be put in. And we've actually tested this sculpture and looked at it under x-rays and seen that there were metal objects and pieces of sacred text that were inserted into the body as a way of enlivening it and making it sacred, making it embodied as a deity. Avalokiteshvara would have originally had 8 arms, and we can see that there are two that are missing. But other than these arms that were pieced together, this sculpture was carved out of a single piece of wood. The wood is from a shal tree, which is a sacred tree in Nepal. It's plentiful in the region, and it's especially resistant to decay and to infestation by insects. So it's especially good for carving sacred art. If we continue to walk around the sculpture, let's just take a look a little bit at the jewelry that he wears. As a divine being, he's wearing ornaments as if he were a prince or a king. So he has these big, heavy earrings, armlets, a necklace across his chest, and a crown on the top of his head. These would have also originally been inlaid with precious stones. Now, this sculpture comes from Nepal. It was made in the 14th century, and it would have originally been positioned in the shrine of a Buddhist monastery. Nepal was hit by a major earthquake in 2015, and many of the shrines and temples and historical buildings were destroyed. So we're actually very lucky to be able to walk into the Freer Gallery today and see this remarkable sculpture preserved in all its glory. With that, I'll turn it over to Aparna. And at the end, after the meditation, I'll be very happy to answer any questions and share any additional information about this sculpture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma, for that illuminating spotlight talk. Now we will move on to our meditation practice. But just as we start, I would like to share with you a fun fact. And let me share my screen for that. So we all know this camera company Canon. And interestingly, their first logo was inspired by Avalokiteshvara, who is known as Kwanon in Japan. So the company that makes devices, the imaging devices that help us to see clearly, is inspired by a deity who is a deity of compassion. And in many ways, compassion can help us to see the truth in a way that is clear, but also as a way of nonviolence. And as I say that, I'm reminded of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, or Gandhiji as we call him in India, whose 151st birth anniversary we're observing today. So he said his life was based on the pillars of truth and nonviolence. And he said, truth is my God, and nonviolence, or ahimsa, is the means to realize it. Indeed, nonviolence or non-harming arises out of this quality of compassion, this acknowledgement that every other life is as important as my own. So let Avalokiteshvara and Gandhiji inspire us in this heart chakra-based meditation today. And as we practice that meditation, I invite you to find a posture where you can sit with ease, perhaps find a tall spine. And during the meditation, I will be cueing you to hold the Gyan Mudra. So when we come to that point, you would want to try or explore the practice of Gyan Mudra. So let me show you how you could practice this. So in each of your hands, we'll bring the thumb and the index fingertips together, and the back of the hand would rest on the palms or by the side. It's better if you can rest it on the thighs, because that, in an energetic sense, in yoga, we believe that it completes an energy circuit if your palms are resting on the knees or thighs. Okay? So, friends, Gyan Mudra. Whenever I cue you to practice Gyan Mudra, you could bring your hands to that gesture and see for yourselves. If you find this comfortable, you can also use it throughout the meditation. And if you would like to adopt it only during that part of the meditation, you could do that as well. All right. So let's start by centering our attention. So feel free to close your eyes, maybe lower the gaze. The intention being to turn our awareness to feel our own presence where we are. So let's bring awareness to where the body is placed in space, noticing where the points of contact are through which this body is being supported. Bringing your awareness to these points of contact, let us also think about all the forces of the universe that have been supporting our journeys up to this point. And maybe we could start our practice today from a place of gratitude for all the forces, for all the compassionate forces of the universe that have guided us to being here, to being now. And perhaps we could honor this being here now, imagining that our breath is being guided to these points of contact, inviting the body to relax as we trust these points of contact. Let the body take up space. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Slowly allow your attention to spread from the points of contact to the rest of the body. Start with the feet. First, notice how the feet are touching the floor, a carpet, maybe a pair of socks. What are the sensations there? And then slowly let that awareness rise up to the tops of the feet, to each of the toes. To the ankles. Perhaps insides of the feet, the bones, the internal structures. Noticing what are the sensations here right now. And then slowly let that awareness rise up through the shins and calves. Maybe the calves are resting against the base of the sofa or the chair. You can notice what's going on here. What are the sensations? Slowly letting that awareness emanate from the calves towards the shins. And when observing the sensations there feels complete, maybe allow that awareness to now rise into the knees, knee creases, the underside of the thighs, resting on the chair, resting on the seat, and then the top and sides of the thighs. Maybe tuning into the sensations along the longest bones of the body in the thighs, the hips and the seat, the lower back, the upper back, the shoulders, the chest, the waist, the arms, the fingers, the tips of the fingers, the palms, back of the hands, the neck, the face, the head. Let's tune into all those sensations, which tell us that the body is physically here. Like if we couldn't see or move the body, how would we know? What are the aspects of the self that remind us that we hold a presence wherever we are? And let this be the foundation for our attention. So anytime the mind wanders away, or we're finding that the mind is everywhere, we can always anchor its attention to here and now by drawing our attention to the body's presence, where we are, just as we are. Now we'll bring a little more attention to the breath. We'll be practicing Ujjayi breathing. So softly engage the throat as if you're trying to clear it, but really, really softly engaging the throat as you breathe in and breathe out. So practice Ujjayi breathing if it is accessible to you right now. Also, you could just watch the breath coming in and leave if that's not too subtle for you. As you bring your awareness to the breath, now let's zoom into the awareness of breath unfolding in the chest space. If you wish to, you may cross your palms on the heart. And the slowing down of the breath to help us feel the breath expand and soften in all the 3 dimensions of the chest and the upper torso. And just for the next few moments, let the breath be all that exists, the breath in the heart space. And it becomes effortless to stay tuned to the heart space and the breath there. And relax your palms down. Continuing to be with the breath. And if you notice anything like maybe a sort of tension in the shoulders or something that's keeping the breath from unfolding completely, you're welcome to make adjustments to your posture. You're gently shifting a little side to side. You're rolling the shoulders. We're doing everything intentionally so you can facilitate more ease. And now, intimately connecting with all the sensations in the heart space. And as you bring this awareness to the heart space, just check in if there's any difference between what you observe in the heart, around the chest, versus the rest of the body. I notice a steady stream of attention flowing where the attention goes. So with that awareness that this energy is flowing between this body, this self, to that which we are paying attention to, let us gaze at the form of Avalokiteshvara, the one who is looking down from above. And just allow your gaze to notice whatever speaks to you. Notice the form. Notice the triple bent posture, bending first at the knees, swaying towards the image right side, and then the hips swaying in the opposite direction. And then the chest and the shoulders swaying again in the same direction as the knees. Suggesting a very flow-like, fluidic state. A sense of balance which arises when one experiences the ease of being, like a path of least resistance. But also this quality of ease being founded on the stability in the feet. Like when one is existing in their own true power. So how can we bring this quality of ease into ourselves right now? How can we relax as we pay attention? Maybe we could close our eyes here or lower the gaze. And place our right palm to the chest, left palm below the sternum, a few inches above the navel, or below the ribs. Imagine all of this quality of ease flowing through the palms through the right hand, to the right palm, down to the navel, where the other palm is. Establishing this flow of energy that invites us to remember that I am enough. I am enough just as I am. I am enough just as I am. Allow the mind and its thoughts to relax into this awareness that we have all that it needs to be just as we are. I am enough. Let us remind ourselves of the wholeness of our being. So our words, thoughts, and actions may rise above the need of self-preservation and be able to focus, be able to connect and focus to this rest of this world. And here, I invite you to now bring your palms down and adopt the Gyano Mudra. As we do that, let us imagine that our index fingers are like the self, the individual self. The thumb is the universal self, the supreme consciousness. The other three fingers are the forces of nature that keep cycling. So as we lift the index finger to touch the tip of the thumb, we're inviting ourselves to rise above the forces of nature, to transcend the limitations that might come with the identification of the self to all these dualities, and merge with that universal self. Allow yourself to take a few breaths in this awareness. And let the sound of the music in the background create that ambience for you. If you're a visual person, you're also welcome to look at Avalokiteshvara. Just be. As we experience quality of oneness, as we see ourselves and all other beings echoing the values in Lakesh Alakin, or as they say in Sanskrit, Toham Hamsaha. Just repeat the following silently. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings realize that they are embodiments of joy, bliss, and light. If you wish to repeat these silently to yourself, feel free to. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings realize that they are embodiments of bliss and light. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May our hearts be stretched out in compassion towards everyone, because everyone is walking their own difficult path. When we're ready to bring this compassionate attitude towards every thought, word, and action as we embrace life today, especially with those who might be absolutely different from us. We join palms in prayer and close by sharing or offering the self the first namaste, offering a second namaste to the sculptors, to the wood carvers who gave us this beautiful work of art to meditate upon. We also offer a silent namaste to all of us for sharing their presence and togetherness in this meditation. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace be to all. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining me in this meditation. I hope the meditation helped you find your own inner reserve of calm and peace. If you have any questions for me based on yoga, meditation, or the yamas of ahimsa and satya, that is non-harming and truth, which are stated in yoga philosophy and are the foundational values of yoga practice, please feel free to post that to chat. And now I'd like to pass on the screen to Grace, so Grace and Emma could answer all the questions. Thank you so much once again for being here.
Thank you, Aparna. Thank you for leading us in that lovely meditation today. Emma, we had one question come in from the chat from Adrienne. She's interested in the sculpture and if the 6 arms are sort of meant to be literal. Does Avalokiteshvara literally have 6 arms, or are they meant to represent motion?
Wonderful question. So Hindu and Buddhist deities have many different names and many different bodies. And so they're often shown with different numbers of arms, different numbers of faces, in different postures, accompanied by different attendant figures. So I love the idea of the multiple arms representing motion, and I think that that's an effect that that is certainly felt in art. In a painting or in a sculpture, we really get that sense of physicality, and that the arms are almost like moving around the figure. If you notice that each of the hands has a different gesture or mudra. So each of the arms actually contains meaning signified within it. So this gesture, for example, is a boon granting gesture. It's reaching down, reaching out to the devotee. And we really do get that sense of movement or talking or something kind of happening here.
Oh, thank you so much. We have another interesting question from Linda, and she's wondering, how do you know that it is this particular deity? And also, she's asking about the terms she or he. How do you know the gender of the figure?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll teach you a great trick for Himalayan art. So this is not applicable to all of Asian art, but it is to Himalayan art. Look at the brow line. Male deities tend to have this kind of widow's peak. You see that? And female deities have an arched brow, so a round face. So that's one of the ways that you can tell. You can also look at the breasts, but sometimes that gets a little bit ambiguous, especially in paintings. It can be a little bit difficult to tell from the body. The aesthetic preference was for this almost androgynous type of body, very lithe, very slender, not wearing anything on top, just ornaments, but wearing this dhoti around his hips. But this is a male deity. In China and Japan, actually, Avalokiteshvara is female. So you may have heard of Guanyin or Kannon, which Aparna showed at the beginning of the meditation. And that's a female deity, excuse me, but it's actually a different manifestation of this same kind of embodiment of compassion.
Tamina asks about how and when did the friar acquire the sculpture? I believe it was bought by the museum around the year 2000. Is that correct, Emma?
That is correct. You can always tell the date when the museum acquired a sculpture by the first number in its accession. So the first part of an accession number is the date that the museum acquired it. So this is F2000.5. So it means the fifth object that we acquired in the year 2000. The first record that we have of this sculpture is in 1972. It was with a dealer. It changed hands a couple of times, basically between that dealer and a collector, and eventually we were able to acquire it in 2000.
A few questions for you, Aparna, about some of the books or meditation resources that you mentioned today, and if there's anything in particular you'd like to suggest in terms of reading that people could do about some of the concepts you mentioned.
Sure, Grace. I think some of the best resources on the yamas are the books that talk about Yoga Sutras. Yoga Sutras are a very seminal text for anyone studying yoga, because it is thought that for the first time, all of the teachings of yoga were compiled into 196 aphorisms or sutras, which means threads. And it's beautiful that Patanjali, sage Patanjali, who is considered the father of yoga, Raja Yoga, gave us this thread, so each one of us could interpret it based on our own experiences, coming to the same truth eventually. But we could, just like if someone gave you a thread, you could put on beads or you can put on flowers onto it, depending on what you want to. So we have Yoga Sutras by Patanjali as one of the best texts for understanding the yamas and the niyamas. And yamas and niyamas are sort of the first two limbs of the 8 limbs of yoga philosophy. I hope that is the question that you asked, like that is the reference that you were asking. If you think I haven't answered your question, please do post that to the chat. I'd be happy to share more. So JS wants to know, what are the peaks on the crown, the horn-like peaks?
Oh, sure.
Significance to that?
Yeah. So this is a very typical Nepali crown. It actually used to have 5 of these kind of foliate points. In fact, if we look at the side view, it may be a little bit clearer. Yeah, there we go. So you can see this foliate section here. So there would have been 5, and in the front is a little face of Garuda. the divine eagle, who's actually very important in Nepali art across Hindu and Buddhist sculpture. So you can really see that face right here, and the wing coming back here. Garuda is typically associated with Vishnu, who is a Hindu god, but he also appears on Buddhist figures, especially in this crown. And we can get a sense of what this crown originally looked like by surviving Nepalese crowns. So the jewelry that Avalokiteshvara wears is a representation of real gold jewelry that was also used to adorn the sculptures. So there are surviving examples, and it's one of the ways that we can understand something of the original appearance of the sculpture and the way that it was worshipped as well. There was an exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York just a couple of years ago about featuring Nepali crowns, and so there were several examples on view there.
Thank you, Emma. There's one more question. It's from Gerardo. What does it mean, the large earrings and elongated ears?
Okay, great question. Yes, you see these really long, heavy disc earrings that he wears. So the long ears are a sign of, they're a sign of status. Okay, so royal figures also had these long ears, and you often see the Buddha, the historical Buddha represented with these elongated ears with holes in them, but without any jewelry, because that is meant to show that as a prince in the palace, he wore heavy jewelry like this, but he renounced that life of luxury, and so he took out his earrings, but the stretch marks still exist. Looking at the style of the earrings is one of the things that helps us date the sculptures. For example, in very early Indian art, like from the 7th and 8th centuries, you often see that these disc earrings are inserted as plugs into the ear, and the lobe loops around them. You've probably seen people wearing that style of earring, maybe a couple decades ago, more than now. But then in later representations, the earrings changed. I mean, the style changed. And so the disc actually hangs from the lobe rather than being inserted into it. I also said there was a question about the garment as well. So he's wearing a kind of stylized dhoti, which is a typical garment that's made of a single piece of cloth that's wrapped around the hip. So what we're seeing is it's sort of wrapped around and pulled through the legs and then tucked into the waistband. And then we have these sashes fanning out. So it's stylized. I mean, I would invite you to try to figure out the actual wrap of the fabric. Sometimes it's more naturalistically represented than others. And here it's also painted across his legs, and we can really see the patterning, which again tells us something about the style of textiles that would have been printed in the region at the time that this was painted.
Thank you so much, Emma, to answering so many questions for us. And I really appreciate the comment we just received from Joe, who says today's session has fulfilled his hopes for this series, and he's loving the art and meditation. Thank you all for being with us as we continue to explore this series and what it can be, and new ways to look at art together. So thank you to Aparna for creating this space, for Emma sharing your knowledge with us today, and have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Stay safe, and peace to all.